On today's episode of Secrets to Scaling Your E-commerce Brand, I had Jordan Salvit from Salvit Advisors on the podcast. Oh, we had such a good conversation. We talked all about how he grew and exited a cat subscription company, cat subscription box company. It was just such a great conversation about all of the things that he's learned throughout that, how he views data. And it's quite a bit different than most likely the way that you are viewing data. And he's got an amazing offer that you will not want to refuse today. You guys are not going to want to miss this one. Hey guys, Jordan West back with another episode of Secrets to Scaling Your E-commerce Brand. Today I'm joined by somebody with a very familiar name, and these people with this first name generally are always good guys, and that's the reason that I'm having them on the podcast today. Jordan Salvit from Salvit Advisors. Jordan, really looking forward to having this conversation. Before we step in, and before you step in, and before I ask you just a trillion questions and really dig into that brain of yours. I had an interesting interaction about a year and a half ago now, or about a year ago, with somebody in my mastermind who was like, hey, you got to talk to this Jordan guy. You know, he absolutely knows his stuff. He set up all of this stuff for us. He dug in and he saw insights that I'd never seen before. And so, of course, I put it on my list to do. It was on my list of things for people to reach out to. But then we somehow got to have this connection through another podcast guest, Tom from Lunchbox. And
Yep.
I was like, oh, this is too good. So without further ado, Jordan Salvit from Salvit Advisors, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. Really appreciate it and excited to chat today.
Yeah, yes, as am I. So Jordan, for people who don't know anything about you or anything that you've done in the past, tell us just a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Sure. So I think the easiest way is to start a little bit. I've been in direct-to-consumer for most of my career, but about 10 years ago, I started a subscription box business for cats. So called Kitnet Box, and we sold toys and treats every month for your cat, similar to BarkBox. And I built that up from nothing with a co-founder of mine, and we sold that to private equity just about 2 years ago. And
Wow.
after selling that, I said, "Hey, I don't know what I want to do," and I started consulting for brands, trying to help other brands figure out how to scale their businesses and grow. And I started out with just a couple of brands helping out, and realized I kind of love this. I love helping and supporting people, supporting brands become profitable while scaling and growing their businesses. So
Awesome.
I've built out this advisory practice now, and we're having a lot of fun, to say the least.
Awesome. That's so great. Well, I'm looking forward to digging into, the way that you look at data, the way that you look at brands, the way that you help people and brands actually see their data and being able to leverage it. I'm looking forward to diving in. Let's go into the subscription box company. I'd love to hear a little bit about the beginnings of that. Where did you see the market at that time? Was BarkBox already around?
Yeah, so we launched. We launched in the beginning of 2014. BarkBox was 3 years in at that point, or two and change years in. They had already done $100 million of, or maybe not $100 million, but $50 million of fundraising. And we said, okay, well, why isn't anybody doing this for cats? And I'm a cat person. I've always been a cat person. I now have 4 cats at home, and so my co-founder and I, we were like, well, we have no idea. Why isn't BarkBox doing it? And why isn't anybody else out there? And so we decided straight off the bat, it could either be that that cat people just weren't interested in it, or just that the cat market was completely underserved. And if you've been to any Petco or PetSmart or similar kind of a store, you know that when you walk into the store, it's got 3 aisles of dog and 1 aisle of shared cat, bird, hamster, every other pet that's
Bunny.
out there.
I'm a bunny guy. I got some
There you
bunnies
go.
even just like right on the
See?
other side of this wall to me here.
And so see, bunnies share the aisle with all the other pets, whereas dog has 3 to 4 aisles. And so it turns out that the entire cat space was just underserved. And there was a real need, and cat people wanted to subscribe and wanted a service like this. And so we immediately launched and had a lot of success.
So I'm interested to hear what your thought was around going subscription based at that time. Was that kind of like a no brainer? Like, oh yeah, we're gonna go subscription. We want that MRR. Were you thinking exit immediately? Because obviously, we've talked about this on the podcast before. I bought and sold businesses before. When you have MRR like that, right, or
Yep.
or
Yep.
a monthly recurring revenue, sorry, your business is just worth more, right? It's just the multiples are different. Were you thinking of
Yep.
that immediately, or were you like, this is just a great way to serve our customers?
We weren't thinking about it from an exit perspective that that's going to get us the best return. That wasn't where it was. And actually, it's kind of interesting because when we first launched, we said, oh, we're going to go and fundraise. BarkBox just did all this fundraising. We should be able to also. And the monthly recurring revenue was interesting, but subscription box was something that everybody at that time said, no, we're not interested. We don't want to touch that with 10-foot pole. And that was great because it made
Why?
that this was, I will tell you, all the people we chatted with, and they were all like, nah, BarkBox is going to do this. We're not touching it. And it was great. I'll tell you, the reality is because we bootstrapped the whole thing. We had to learn our unit economics from the beginning. We had to
Yeah.
know how to be profitable from the beginning. We were profitable within our first 9 months of business, right?
Wow.
And we never dipped from there. So that was really key. And we did that because of all the VCs that said no.
Yeah, absolutely. And what a great lesson, guys. I want you to really take this. Like, if you need to pause this one for a second, pause before you think that you have to raise VC money, right? Because
Yeah.
in my mind, it's two different businesses, right? When you raise
Yep.
friends and family, that's a little different than raising a VC round. But there are going to be there's certain ways that you need to grow when you raise VC money versus versus bootstrapping, right? And
Yep.
I've always been a bootstrapper. We've raised a little bit at some of our companies, but never to the VC extent. I just don't like that. I don't like that pressure. I don't think that every business is meant to rocket ship like that, or
Yeah.
can rocket ship like that with unit economics. So
I think that's right. I completely agree with you. And maybe that's because we're both Jordans. But I think that not every business is fit for venture capital. I think technology requires a lot of cost. And so that makes sense. But in direct to consumer brands as a whole, e-commerce, when we think about it, I don't know that it's necessary. I think if we are smart about how we're pricing, we're smart about how we're acquiring customers, and again, thinking about our payback period for those customers, we should be able to fund in a smart way and self-fund in a smart way, right? And
yeah,
that's the key. And talk about some of the stuff I do with my existing clients. We build out. I view a lot of what I do as education. And one of the things I will do is build out a financial model showing projections to say, the reason why venture capital needs so much money and why you need millions of dollars, because you're going to go from 1,000 customers to 100,000 customers in 3 months and 6 months. You need millions of dollars to fund that because your chances are your payback period is going to take you 1, 2, 3 months, depending on how much you're paying to acquire those customers. That's a lot of money. But if instead we run this model and say, let's grow consistently 5% month over month, 10% month over month, we can afford that, right? And still, if you look at it, 10% month over month means you're doubling your business in a year, right? But that's money that we can then afford and we can do well. So understanding those differences and whether you want to be VC backed or not and why you go in one direction or the other.
totally. And doubling your business year over year is not a bad thing, guys. That's not slow growth, right? Especially in 2022, 2023, like in this time that we're in right now. That's not a horrible thing. But I love how you break that down into some of these smaller chunks. Let's get into some of the lessons that you learned through your subscription cat subscription company. Let's get into some of those lessons that you learned, and then I'd love to sort of see how that translates into how you help clients today.
Yeah. So one of the first things that I would say we had to learn was what churn meant. And when you think about churn, nowadays there are so many platforms out there that are that manage customer subscription. But when we started the business, there wasn't. And we had to build it from scratch. There was no recharge. There was no stay.ai. None of these things existed. And so we built it all out, which meant that we actually also had to build the analytics out. And we had to define what that meant for churn. Now, my degrees, and I have degrees in computer science and that kind of stuff. And so I didn't mind having to build it out. But the point here is to say we built it out and made sure I understood every single number. And what I realized when I started advising other brands was that they trust each of these platforms to tell them, hey, a customer canceled today. This customer, for example, they canceled today, their renewal is in 3 days from now, or their renewal is in 6 months from now because of where it is. And so, or their renewal was 3 months ago, but they skipped and they did some other stuff. And so that person has a cancellation today. And what I realized was what a cancellation should be is a predictor for when you expect revenue. So to give you a more concrete example, if you charge a customer every single month, right, you want to know how many of people from today that, let's say, that started today are going to give you money again next month.
Yeah.
Right. And so what is valuable to you is to know the churn or the cancellation rate after each charge. Not did they stay on for 6 months, but you only got $1 from them or one charge from them, right? Does that mean that they're with you for 6 months? No, that meant they're with you for one charge, right?
Yeah.
And that's the value where most of the systems out there today, and what I try to coach and show people on the subscription side is, the way we define cancellation and churn is based off of each charge, so that I can then predict in a better way how much revenue you're going to get next month, how much revenue are you going to get the month after, and how much revenue you're going to get the month after that. Because at the end of the day, we want that MRR, but we want it to be predictable. And subscription can be predictable if you know those numbers in a meaningful way.
I mean, I think of subscription businesses as being a heck of a lot more predictable than the majority of the D2C businesses out there, right? Which are not, most of the D2C businesses out there are not subscription based. Right. I think a lot of people, except in the CPG world. Now, in the CPG world, I think that they've really figured that part out. But I think that a lot of other brands are having a bit of a more difficult time. It's interesting. I've looked into this for some of our clothing companies, especially like our baby clothing company, and looked into the subscription model. And what we've wanted to do is like a Grow With Me box. And I've talked to every single subscription company out there. I just chatted with another one, Smarter, the other day. And they're like, oh, no, we can't do that. Well, why? Subscriptions have been around for how long? How can we not give them a different size every 3 months? Like that, to me, that just seems very simple.
That is a no-brainer. That's right.
Yeah. And yet they haven't figured it out, the companies. And I'm, unfortunately, I just don't have the time nor the computer science background to be able to figure it out myself. So,
no, I'll tell you this. There are some platforms out there that I believe will and can help you. But that's the reason, to give you an example, that's the reason. So Kiwi Company is one of the other largest subscription companies out there that target that demographic. And they've built out all of this themselves too, right? Because they started as a long time ago as well, and they built their own subscription platform, and they can do all of that. So they grow with you on that side. And
that's right. I think I was using Kiwi as my example, actually. So I was like, well, they can do it. Why can't we do it?
Yeah, that's right. I think it's worthwhile, and I think it's a wonderful idea for kids' clothing to get into that subscription element and have it grow with you. A quarterly box, giving the new kids, right, every 3 to 6 months, new clothing, right?
Think about it as like for grandparents buying that for their kids, right, or for their grandkids, like that sort of thing. I saw a great use case. Jordan, let's transition from me telling stories like I always do, and giving my opinion on everything all the time. Oh, by the way, actually, sorry, I do want to give a little tidbit here that I learned from. So I meet with a mentor twice a month. Incredible. Having a mentor in your life, guys, is one of the most incredible things you can do. If you can have an advisor. I mean, that's why I have Jordan on here right now, right? For this reason, because if you have not thought about having somebody in the space who can be a mentor and advisor, it is probably it's probably actually the number one leverage that I have is speaking with my mentor. And there's something interesting that he told me yesterday. I was trying to get something from somebody, and I won't get into the situation exactly. And he said, why don't you try this? Why don't, instead of asking for their opinion, you ask for their advice? And it's funny because I've changed that. And I'm always like, hey, can I just grab your advice on this? This is kind of the problem that we're trying to solve. And it's mind-boggling. This was yesterday I learned this lesson, and I just kept trying it. I tried it with my wife too. And And it was like, instead of her giving her opinion on it, she's like, okay, well, if it was me, I think this is how I would tackle it. And it
Yeah.
was like such good advice that she gave me. So anyway, that's just my little side piece for today here, Jordan. I would love.
I totally appreciate that, and I'll echo the fact that you have a coach. I have a weekly coach, right?
You do, yeah.
I view what we do as coaching, as you said. I coach and mentor all of my clients, but I think we all need a coach too. So I have one that I work with on a weekly basis, the same way that I work with each of my clients on a weekly basis. We all need to be growing, and we all need help to get there.
Totally. As soon as you don't think that you do, you probably really do. I can't even imagine, like, I will bet you, like, Jeff Bezos has a coach that he talks to all the time. Like, I can't picture anybody who doesn't. I don't know who Warren Buffett would go to, but maybe him and Bill Gates are kind of each other's coaches. I don't know. But
I think you're right. It's definitely there, and especially with all of us in a growth mentality. In order to keep growing wherever we're at, we're here. Let's go there. We're there. We want to go further. You need someone to help you get to that next level.
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the things that, you've talked about, that you sort of let me know about, as far as like an offer that you have for people to work with you. And guys, Jordan and I have lots of other things we're going to talk about today. I just want to make sure that we get to this. And it's the leverage playbook. I'd love for you to walk me through why this leverage playbook. First of all, this is something that you give away and you do for free, which I actually think is insane. I think you should charge $1,000 for it, Jordan. But
there we go. So just for Jordan's people, anyone that listens today, you'll pay $1,000. Everybody else,
well, the people are getting it for free. They may not realize the insane value that's in there. So why the leverage playbook? What are you looking at, and what kind of leverage are you actually seeing when you dive into some of these analytics? What is this leverage that you're actually seeing? Because I love the concept of leverage. Everything I'm looking for all the time. 10x easier than 2x. We all know that from Mr. Sullivan.
Exactly. I'm just rereading that right now. So you and I, again, align. But leverage playbook, really what it is our way of basically looking under the hood. We will look under the hood into your business, and we'll try to look for the key opportunities that you should be focusing on as a founder. And I'll tell you, one of the biggest things, and I'm sure this for everyone, is founders are always being pulled in a million different directions. If I were to speak to 100 founders today, I think the biggest thing they would all tell me is, I have a million things I'm working on.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But if you actually looked at those million things, you have to ask the question of what is the 1, 2, or 3 things maximum they should be working on that's going to move the needle in a meaningful way. And if you actually defined every month one priority to move the needle in a meaningful way, and you actually executed on that one priority every single month, you would, once again, be exponentially growing, right? Whether it's exponentially growing of your bottom line or your top line or both, or where that sits. And so what we do is we pull in your information. We try to, when we analyze your business, to try to identify right now, what is that 1, 2, or 3 big priority that's going to help you? Whether it's a learning from the past, for example, your CPAs, where your new customer CPAs should be, whether it's, which maybe all of us know, right? But maybe not, maybe some of us don't, right? Whether there is a product, and one of our newest clients that we just signed on last week, one of the things we identified was that they changed the name of one of their products, and when they changed the name of their product, the product itself didn't change, but that name change drove a different quality of traffic and people in the door, and then their lifetime value changed. Right?
Interesting.
And so, the point
branding
here was
just blows my mind. Like how that little change can make a massive difference in the perception of a brand.
Yeah. And what we said to them is like, listen, we don't know for a guarantee that this is going to reverse, because you've now invested so much other advertising and other things in your name change. But when you change the product name from X to Y, we see a different quality and a different repurchase rate, and where that happens. I said, we kind of want to roll back a little bit and do this in a structured test. And so that's one example of something we look at. Another example is just making sure that you understand what the industry standards are for your industry. And so looking at it, for example, where we talk about most companies are not subscription companies, but do you know where your repurchase rates are? Do you know what your
Yeah.
engagement rates are? And are you firing on all cylinders there? And if not, what are the levers you can be pulling? And that's where this leverage playbook comes from, right? What are the levers we can be pulling in order to leverage your existing customer base or existing product to say, we're going to go and become profitable, right? Or we're going to scale this.
Totally. So Jordan, when you've done quite a few of these analyses with
Yep.
companies, what's one of the craziest pieces of leverage that you've seen in a company that they had no idea was sitting there in front of them,
That they had no idea was sitting in front of them.
or had maybe ever just ignored? Because I feel like that's probably a lot more of like, man, the amount of things that I get across my desk on a daily basis that I'm like, important, not important, important, not important. And I'm sure I've said not important, but it was actually very important. And you as a third party can come in with no emotional biases whatsoever to to it and actually see.
So I think it's for one company that I can think of off the top of my head is they were so focused on growth, right? Growth, growth, growth across the board. Why? Because everyone says we need to grow. So the only way they were thinking about growth was through new customer growth, spending dollars in the door, spending dollars every day. And they said to me, and I was looking at their numbers and I said, you've got a 70% and 80% new customer split, right? Your revenue is coming from that much. I said, why? Why are you making that decision? Why are you investing so much there? And their response to me was, because that's how I have to grow. I have to keep spending. I can't grow if I don't spend. And the piece here is actually quite the opposite. If we understand that our customers love our product, right? It should be the other way around, right? We should have only 25, 30% of our, maybe not 30, but if your subscription 30, but 30 to 40% of our revenue should be coming from new customers. The rest should be coming from existing customers, right? So that's the kind of thing where I was shocked, but at the same time, that's why I do what I do, because I want people to understand what are the real levers that they should be focused on. Where are they going to drive profit? The other piece that is often, I would say, is often overlooked is the return or exchange rates. Some customers don't pay attention to it, or they didn't. And the reason why it's so critical is, once again, that hits the bottom line, right? If you're only focused on top line revenue across the board, then you're not focused on your bottom line. So one of the things we do focus, I think, a lot on is how do we think about contribution margin, and what is that and contribution margin meaning, right? Your total your basically your profit before operating expenses for every single customer, and are we smart about that? So that's a big piece that I would say we arm every one of our clients with.
I love that so much, Jordan. Over at the one of the companies that we own, our agency Up Growth Commerce, we are obsessive about knowing what that contribution margin is, because that actually allows us to know, like, can we actually scale this up or not? It's not just about, are you actually profitable? It's like, where is that magic number that you hit when your fixed costs start to be a much smaller percentage, right? Of your revenue. And I think most brands actually don't know that, because we will go through the numbers and realize, like, oh my gosh, you had no idea that your actual break even, you thought it was 60 grand a month or something, but it's actually like 280. So we need to do something about that and need to find these sort of areas. Jordan, walk me through what it actually looks like, weeks sort of 1 through 8 ish. You can go farther or less than that if you want, on what it looks like to actually work with you.
Yeah. I would say, so before we'll do the playbook first, right? We'll put that all together. That's before we work together. The minute we start to work together, week 1, we're putting together this model that we talked about, right? And why are we doing that? So that we can come up with and understand what your costs are, what are your cost of goods, what are your gross margins across the board, and what is that contribution margin? I give everybody homework within the first couple of weeks to say, what are your fixed expenses? And let's make sure this number is real. Because then we know what is your lowest number that you need to be at your revenue perspective, right? And then we also understand what can we do on the higher level if we want to spend more, right?
Yeah.
And so the first couple of weeks, that's our exercise, right? And then we're working together to say, well, now let's structure some tests to see what does scale look like? What is it that we need to focus on? Is it your repurchase rates? Is it something else? And every single week, we're going to look at how those things are behaving and how that's impacting your bottom line. Because in the beginning, it's a little bit of education. And then from there, on an ongoing basis, we're always thinking about what is your big priority? What is that one? How do I help you analyze that? How does our team help you analyze that? And then are you hitting those goals as we move forward? So that's really a rinse and repeat. And then we're trying to get you to level up and level up and level up.
And guys, I have to say, so I reached out to one of Jordan's clients who I know incredibly well. And I just said, what is the best thing about working with Jordan? And for him, he just said, he's like, I have somebody who I can lean on and actually trust. And the one thing that he said that he appreciated the most is that there is no flowery language around any of this. It is just that Jordan is a straight shooter. You're a gentle straight shooter, though, Jordan. I can tell that over some of the talks that we've had together.
I think it's going to depend on what time of the day you and I chat or I chat, but I would say 9 out of 10 of my calls, I'm a gentle straight shooter there. But I think it doesn't help anyone to kind of soften the language. Hey, if things are not in the right direction, why are you doing it? Right? Is there a rationale behind spending? I had a call with a client that has been spending above and beyond what we would expect, above and beyond their goals. And I was very clear. I was like, why? What are we trying to shoot for here? It's just, to me, you're losing hundreds of thousands of dollars right now. And unless there's a clear logical rationale, I don't know that I can be supportive of that. Right. And so I have to be that straight shooter, because otherwise we're not hitting all of our goals. Right.
Totally. And much rather you be a straight shooter and them not go bankrupt.
Exactly.
It's really interesting the way that we try to protect people's egos, by trying to just be nice. And it's like, yeah, I know, guys, I've made that mistake so many times over the years because I always have the proclivity to go nice. Nice is not kind, right?
Yep.
Kindness is actually reading the numbers and saying, hey, if you don't do this, you're going to fall off of a cliff. Right?
Yep.
Like we need to change this behavior now. And so having somebody in your corner like Jordan, that for me, this is kind of a no-brainer. Once you get to mid 7 figures, 8 figures, it's just like that's the time that you need to have these people. It's funny because on LinkedIn and Twitter, people ask all the time, I know you talk about getting a mentor, like who should I get? And for me, I think the very first mentor coach type of person to have is somebody in your industry. I think that makes a lot of sense. I've had that person who's actually done it and gone ahead. And so it's so great that I now have Jordan as a resource to send people to. So I love it. It's great. Jordan, I got to ask you the question I ask everyone who comes on the podcast. What is your secret to scaling?
My secret to scaling, and I say this across the board, is to get rid of the noise. And what do I mean by that is there is way too much going on. And, actually, I'm going to take a quote or a part out of 2x is harder or 10x is easier than 2x, right? That we have to get rid of 80%, right, of what we're doing today in order to get to that 10x level and then to get to that scale. And the way I interpret that and the way I do that with all of my clients is to say, what is that noise that is distracting you from the one important thing that you should be doing? As a founder at a certain scale, it means that I'm going to help you manage your team so that you have the right KPIs for every one of them in place and that they are executing on all cylinders, right? Because that's what's going to get you to scale. Right. At a smaller size, it's focusing on what are your marketing KPIs? What is your repurchase rates? Where do they sit? And those are 1 or 2 or 3 things that you're looking at, and that's it. Everything else, move that noise away. And then once you do,
we know that
you can scale. Yeah.
We as owners, we all know that noise, right? And it's really interesting because I was having one of those days today earlier where I was just trying to figure out, I'm like, where are the priorities? What are the priorities? So instead of actually doing the hard work and looking at the priorities, I decided to update my computer because it just felt good. Because it was what, and I think this
Yep.
is one of those examples that it's just like, well, I just wanted to feel like I accomplished something and I needed to update my computer. So I felt
Yep.
like I accomplished something. And yet, did I, guys? Did I?
Did,
You know,
did
you
it
know,
help?
now
Did
that-
it help you? Did it move the needle in any way? Did you make any more money from it? No,
no,
not at all.
no, exactly. And it's interesting because the 10x is easier than 2x sort of concept was really solidified for me in this talk, and it's been just shared everywhere that Alex Hormozy gave a few weeks ago. And he talked about this whole idea of, of who's the most effective person out there, right? Who is the most effective person out there? And so I was like trying to think, I'm like, I don't know, like maybe one of the presidents or somebody like that. He's like, no, Elon. Elon's the most effective. Why? Because his net worth is $250 billion and he has the same 24 hours as all of us. And it was just an interesting concept of like, oh yeah, like I understand money is not everything. Jordan and I both know that. We both acknowledge that. But when you really think about like, okay, at the end of the day, what is this output actually like? How do you quantify this output? Me doing my, restarting my computer, there's no output quantification whatsoever. Right. But it made me feel good.
And I think that's the other part, though. We have to recognize that there are certain things we need to feel good, and that's still important to success. And so, but is it really going to help us and take scale and grow? And I think the answer most times is no. And if we can give that work over to somebody else that actually they can do that at a perfect level, then that's how we're going to scale.
Absolutely. Guys, before we get into the last three questions, I just want to encourage you, if this sounds interesting to you, if this conversation between the two Jordans, has sparked any interest for you, I really recommend you guys go to salvit.com, salvit.com. Go sign up for the leverage playbook. He's going to charge you $1,000 now because I said that that's what it was worth, but just kidding. It is actually free right now. But me as an advisor to Jordan, I'm going to change that. So
you're gonna every week from now on. Actually, maybe you and I every other week, and there it is. I'll have another advisor in my back pocket, and I'm looking forward, Jordan.
That's great. That's great. Well, I do love the agency world and the advisory world. I feel like I've made so many mistakes over the years, guys, in this world. I've made a lot of mistakes in D2C too. Don't worry about that. But yeah, Jordan, it's just such a pleasure getting to talk to you. I wish we had even more time, but I do have 3 more questions ready for you.
Go for it.
Okay. First question, favorite tool or app that you're using right now?
So it's actually an app that I use. This is not related to D2C or any of that. It's an app that I use to work with my health coach, that he can give me exercises that can hold me accountable. And it's just, I'm going to tell you the name of it, which is Train. It's called, I should know the name of these things. It's called Train Heroic. Sorry.
Cool.
So good app. Cool. I like it. Love that we can interact that way. So
that's awesome. Guys, on the health tracking sort of side of things, I really recommend that you try something. If you can't afford a health coach, try visibility with your friends at least. I will tell you, I do competitions with my friends on the Apple Watch all the time. And there are nights where I am just so beat and I'm like, well, I have to win. So it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to go and do whatever I need to do to beat them. So I'm doing this with some agency owners right now too. So if you're an agency owner out there and you want to, you want me to destroy you, please feel free to reach out and we'll share each other's competitions.
I love it. And I agree with you. Having somebody or a group of people to help hold you accountable gives you so much value.
Yeah, absolutely. Second question for you. Favorite podcast or audiobook that you're listening to right now?
Yeah. So the audiobook that I'm listening to, that I'm listening to it again, is 10x is easier than 2x, right? So loving it again. That's one of that's one that's out there. I'll tell you another one that because I think it's something I tell everybody, is 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So those are the 2 guys on the top of my list.
The Jordans unite here. These are, I read 7 Habits every single year, if not 2 times a year, and reference it. People are probably like, did you pay him to say that? No, I did not pay him to say that. Okay.
Yeah. We do think alike. There's something in the name, Jordan.
So. Yeah, there's something in the name, yeah. Or maybe these books are lagging indicators of the principled hard work that we've done, right? Like in just learning like what works and what doesn't. And Dan Sullivan for me is one of those people that's just like, He is a phenomenal human being. This is 10x is easier than 2x, and just incredible what he has done with Strategic Coach over the years. I mean, he's in his 80s now and
Yep.
is just as spry as ever. And I recommend reading all of his books, but start with 10x is easier than 2x.
Yep. Agreed.
Jordan, last question for you. You just found out you have a year to live. What changes?
Nothing. I love interacting with brands all day long. The way that I have my goal in life is a service. I work with my coach to talk through this, right? But I'm a service oriented leader. I love
Cool.
what I do as part of serving the community and through helping others grow. And the way that I make an impact in my day to day is both through that. Maybe if I had a year to live, I would give a lot more money to all the foundations, to the cat foundations that I currently support. But otherwise, I think I would do the same thing.
Awesome. Awesome. That's great. Jordan, so nice to have you on here. Again, where can people connect with you personally? And then where can they go and get that leverage playbook?
So connect with me personally, LinkedIn, just linkedin.com/in/salvit. That's me directly. Reach out, say hello, tell me that you heard about me here, and we'll connect. You can shoot me an email, just jordan@salvit.com. And I think the other place is certainly go to salvit.com, fill out the form on there, and so that we can get connected and get you that playbook.
Awesome. That's great. And guys, remember everything that Jordan and I have talked about today will be down in the show notes. Every single link. Please go to those show notes. We put a lot of time into those show notes, and everything that we talked about from today, if there's a link to it, we will put it down there. So thank you again so much for your time today, Jordan. I might just have to have you on here again sometime soon.
Well, thank you, Jordan. This was a blast. I really appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to the next time.
Awesome.